Part 1, The Impossible Task. The great halls of Narration Prime shimmered with a soft blue light that came from the walls themselves. The palace was built from crystal and stone that had been shaped by dragon fire centuries ago. Everything was grand and beautiful, but today, everything was also broken. Prince Karthak stood in the middle of the throne room with his arms raised. Energy crackled around his small body like lightning. He was angry. Very angry. The furniture around him flew through the air. Chairs crashed into walls. A table split into pieces. The guards and servants had all run away. Only the royal family remained, watching from behind protective shields that glowed with magical force. The emperor sat on his throne, his face dark with frustration. He was a large dragon with scales that shone like polished metal. His daughter, the Empress Lyra, stood beside him, shaking her head slowly. They had called 17 babysitters to care for the young prince. 17. And every single one had left in tears or fear or both. "This is the 17th one this month," Lyra said quietly to her father. "The last one said she would never work with dragons again. She is moving to another planet." The emperor closed his eyes. "The Celestial Games begin in 8 weeks. Every leader in the galaxy will be watching. The prince must show strength and control. Instead, he throws things like a child who has never been taught discipline." In the throne room, Karthak screamed. His voice was high and sharp, not yet deep like his father's. He was only 12 years old in human years, but he was already powerful. Too powerful. His anger could shake buildings. His tantrums could crack stone. "Nobody understands me," he yelled. "Nobody listens. You all just want me to be quiet and sit still and be perfect." Nobody answered. There was nobody left to answer. The guards stood far away, their faces showing no emotion. They had learned not to react. It only made the prince angrier. Down in the lowest level of the palace, where the cleaning supplies were kept, a human named Peter was organizing the storage room. He had worked at Narration Prime for 6 months, and in all that time he had learned one important thing. Dragons were interesting, but they were also very loud. Peter was from Earth, a small blue planet far away. He was tall and thin with dark hair and kind eyes. He had come to this alien world to earn money for his family back home. The job was simple. He cleaned the palace. He swept floors, washed windows, and organized the storage areas. It was not fancy work, but it was honest work, and Peter was good at it. He was humming an old song from Earth when the vibration started. The walls shook slightly. Then more. Peter stopped humming and looked up. He knew what this meant. The prince was having another tantrum. "Here we go again," Peter said to himself. He put down his broom and walked toward the sound. The palace corridors were long and beautiful. The walls were decorated with paintings and sculptures. But as Peter walked, he noticed that some of these decorations were now broken. A statue lay on its side. A painting hung crooked on the wall. More evidence of the prince's anger. Peter reached the main hallway that led to the throne room. He could hear the shouting even from far away. He could see the glowing energy that came from the young dragon's power. But instead of running away like everyone else, Peter simply continued walking. He pushed his cleaning cart in front of him, completely calm. When he reached the entrance to the throne room, he stopped. The scene before him was one of total destruction. Furniture was broken into pieces. The walls had cracks. The prince stood in the middle of it all, his body glowing with energy, his face red with anger. Peter looked at the emperor and the empress. They were watching him with surprise. They had not expected a human to simply walk into a dragon's tantrum without fear. Peter turned back to look at the prince. He did not bow. He did not show fear. He simply looked at the young dragon with a calm, steady gaze. "Excuse me," Peter said in a quiet voice. "I need to clean this room." Karthak stopped in the middle of a scream. His energy stopped crackling. He stared at the human. Nobody had ever spoken to him like that. Nobody had ever ignored his anger. Nobody had ever walked into his tantrum and simply asked to clean up. "Do you not know who I am?" the prince asked, his voice suddenly smaller and less angry. Peter picked up a piece of broken furniture and put it to the side. "I assume you are someone who makes a lot of mess," he said. "Because right now, that is all that matters to me." The empress's eyes went wide. The emperor leaned forward. They could not believe what they were hearing. This human was speaking to the prince like he was a regular person. Like he was not royalty. Like he was not dangerous. Karthak felt something strange inside his chest. It was not anger. It was not the power that usually filled him. It was confusion. For the first time in his life, someone was not impressed by who he was. Someone was not afraid of his power. "I can make bigger messes," the prince said, but his voice was uncertain. I am sure you can, Peter said, not even looking up from his cleaning. But then I would have to clean those up too. And I am already very busy. Carthax had no idea how to respond to this. He had never met someone like this human. Everyone in the palace bowed to him. Everyone feared him. Everyone tried to make him happy, or at least tried not to make him angry. But this human was just cleaning. Peter began sweeping the broken pieces into a pile. He worked slowly and carefully, humming his Earth song again. He did not look at the prince. He did not try to talk to him. He simply did his work. Carthax watched for a long time. Slowly, his anger began to fade. The energy around his body stopped glowing. His hands stopped shaking. He was confused and interested, and for the first time in many days he was not angry. What is that sound? Carthax asked finally. That sound you are making? Peter stopped sweeping and looked at the prince. For the first time he smiled. That, he said, is a song. Would you like to hear it? And in that moment, in the broken throne room of Dracon Prime, something changed. Prince Carthax could not stop thinking about the human. For 3 days after the incident in the throne room, the young dragon followed Peter around the palace. Wherever the human went, the prince went too. It was strange behavior for a royal dragon, but Carthax did not care what anyone thought anymore. Peter was in the east wing cleaning the windows. The afternoon sun came through the glass and made long shadows on the floor. The human moved slowly and carefully, making sure each window was perfectly clean. He did not notice the prince at first. He was concentrating on his work, humming that same Earth song again. Why do you do that? Carthax asked suddenly, appearing beside him. Peter jumped a little, surprised. But then he smiled. Do what? Make that sound. That humming. It serves no purpose. It does not clean anything. It does not make you stronger. Why do you do it? Peter put down his cleaning cloth and looked at the prince. The young dragon was genuinely curious. His eyes were bright and he was not angry. This was the first time Peter had seen him look peaceful. Where I come from, Peter said, sitting down on a nearby bench, people make sounds and music when they are happy. Or sometimes when they are sad. Or sometimes just because they feel like it. It does not have to serve a purpose. Not everything has a reason. Carthax sat down beside him. This idea was new to him. In the palace, everything had a purpose. Everything had a reason. Even games were meant to teach him something about being a dragon. Even rest was meant to prepare him for work. But making sounds just because? That was strange. Tell me more about your planet, the prince said. Tell me about the sounds. So Peter began to talk. He told Carthax about Earth. He told him about music and songs and instruments. He told him about people who made music just for the joy of it, not because they were royal or because they had to. He told him about simple people who lived simple lives and found happiness in small things. Carthax listened with complete attention. He had never heard stories like this before. In his world, dragons were powerful and important. They fought and trained and proved themselves through strength. But in Peter's stories, humans were weak. They could not fly. They could not breathe fire. They lived for such a short time. Yet somehow they seemed happier than dragons. Humans must be stupid, Carthax said finally. They are weak, but they do not seem to mind. Peter laughed. It was a kind laugh, not a mean one. Maybe we are not stupid. Maybe we just understand something that dragons do not. What is that? The prince asked. That life is short, whether you are a dragon or a human. So you might as well enjoy it. You might as well be kind to others. You might as well make music and tell stories and laugh with friends. Carthax thought about this for a long time. Nobody had ever told him that before. His tutors had taught him about power and strength and duty. His parents had taught him about responsibility and honor. But nobody had ever told him that the point of life might be to enjoy it. The next day, Carthax had a small tantrum in the library. He did not get the book he wanted from the high shelf. Usually, when he had a tantrum, the servants would immediately get whatever he wanted. But Peter was nearby, and Peter just looked at him and said nothing. Are you not going to help me? Carthax asked, his anger building. Can you reach it? Peter asked. No. I am too small still. Then you have two choices, Peter said. You can throw a fit and make a mess for me to clean up. Or you can ask me nicely to help you and then I will help you. Which sounds better to you? Carthax had never had to choose before. Usually, his anger got him what he wanted. But standing in front of Peter, looking at the human's calm face, he realized that was not how Peter worked. Will you help me get the book? Carthax asked quietly. Of course, Peter said, and he reached the book easily. It was a simple moment, but it changed something in the prince. He realized that Peter was treating him like a regular person. Not like royalty. Not like someone to fear. Just like a person. And when Peter treated him that way, Carthax found that he did not need to throw tantrums. He did not need to show his power. He could just be. Over the next week, Carthax stopped following Peter constantly. Instead, he asked if he could help with the cleaning. Peter said yes. Together, they swept floors and cleaned windows and organized storage rooms. It was not the kind of work a prince was supposed to do, but Carthax did not care anymore about what he was supposed to do. One afternoon, while they were cleaning the kitchen, Carthax asked a question that had been bothering him. "Why do people have tantrums?" he asked. Peter thought about this while he wiped down a counter. Usually because they are scared or sad or feel like nobody is listening to them. Sometimes all three at once. "I thought tantrums meant someone was strong," Carthax said. "No," Peter said gently. "Tantrums usually mean someone is weak. They mean someone does not know how to handle their feelings, so they just explode. Real strength is learning to feel things and not explode." Carthax understood this. He thought about all his tantrums. They had not made him feel strong. They had made him feel empty and lonely after. But when he was with Peter, doing normal work and talking about normal things, he felt better. He felt happier. "Peter," Carthax said, "I think I understand now. I think I have been doing it all wrong." Peter smiled and put his hand on the young dragon's shoulder. "You are learning. That is what matters. That is what really matters." The weeks passed, and something wonderful happened in the palace of Dracon Prime. Prince Carthax began to change. Not just his behavior but his whole way of thinking about the world. And it was all because of a human janitor who treated him like a normal person. Peter never planned to be a teacher. He was just a cleaner. But as Carthax spent more time with him, the prince began to learn things that no royal tutor could teach him. He learned patience while organizing the storage rooms. He learned teamwork while sweeping floors. He learned to listen while Peter told stories during their breaks. One morning, Peter was cleaning the library when Carthax found him trying to reach a high shelf. Instead of using his dragon powers to fly up, Peter was using a tall ladder. It was slower and harder, but it was the human way. "Why do you not just fly up?" Carthax asked. "Because I cannot fly," Peter said simply. "So I use a ladder. Everything has a solution, even if it is not the easiest one." Carthax watched Peter work carefully on the ladder, one step at a time. The human was patient and steady. He did not rush. He did not complain about the difficulty. He simply worked until the job was done. This idea stayed with Carthax. He realized that he had always tried to solve problems with power. Something was in his way, he destroyed it. If someone disagreed with him, he used his anger to make them listen. But Peter showed him that there were other ways. Slower ways. Gentler ways. Better ways. One afternoon, Peter was telling Carthax about Earth's history while they cleaned the palace kitchen. He told him about wars and suffering. He told him about humans who were weak but brave. He told him about ordinary people who did extraordinary things. "There was this human," Peter said, wiping down the table, "who could not walk. His legs did not work. But he led his country through a terrible time. Everyone thought he was weak because he could not walk. But he was the strongest leader they ever had." Carthax listened carefully. How could someone who was weak be a strong leader? "Because strength is not just about your body," Peter explained. "It is about your mind. It is about your heart. It is about how you treat other people." That human was strong because he cared about his people. He listened to them. He helped them. He made them believe they could do better. This was completely different from what Carthax had been taught. In dragon culture, strength meant power. It meant the ability to fight and win. But Peter was saying that strength could also mean kindness. Could mean listening. Could mean caring about others. "Are dragons not good at caring?" Carthax asked. Peter chose his words carefully. "Dragons are very good at many things. But I think maybe they have forgotten some things. They have forgotten how to be gentle. They have forgotten how to laugh. They have forgotten how to make friends just because they want to, not because it is useful." Carthax thought about his life in the palace. He had servants but not friends. He had tutors but nobody who really listened to him. He had a family but they were always telling him what to do and how to be. Peter was the first person who had ever just talked to him. Like he was someone worth talking to. One day while they were organizing boxes in the storage area, Carthax asked Peter something personal. "Do you have a family?" "I do," Peter said, stacking boxes carefully. "My mother and my father and 2 younger sisters. I miss them very much." "Why did you leave them?" Carthax asked. "Because they needed money," Peter said. "I came here to work and send money home so my family could have a better life. But I miss them every day." Carthax realized something important in that moment. Peter had given up things he loved to help his family. He had left his home and his planet and his people. And he did this not because he was forced to, but because he cared about them. This was a kind of strength that Carthax had never seen before. "I think you are very strong," Carthax said quietly. Peter smiled and put his arm around the young dragon's shoulders. "Thank you, my friend. That means a lot to me." Over the next few weeks, Carthax began to change more and more. He stopped having tantrums completely. When he felt angry or upset, he would find Peter and talk about it instead. Peter taught him to name his feelings, to understand them, to work through them without hurting anyone. The palace staff began to notice. The broken furniture was no longer being broken. The servants could go about their work without fear. The empress noticed that her son was happier. The emperor noticed that the prince was asking questions instead of demanding answers. One evening, Carthax was in the royal garden with his mother when she asked him something that had been puzzling her. "What has changed you so much?" the empress asked. "A few weeks ago you were throwing things everywhere. Now you are calm and thoughtful. What happened?" Carthax looked at his mother. "I met someone who taught me that there is more to being strong than using power. I learned that being kind is also a kind of strength. That listening is important. That other people's feelings matter." The empress smiled. She had no idea that her son was talking about a simple human janitor. But she was grateful for the change in him. The next day the royal family made an announcement. Peter was to be made an official tutor to the prince. They offered him a position of honor and great pay. They told him he could stay at the palace forever if he wanted. Peter thanked them, but his face grew sad. "I am honored," he said. "But my contract ends in 2 months. I promised my family I would come home. I cannot break that promise." When Carthax heard this news, his heart broke a little. The one person who had truly helped him, the one person who had shown him how to be better, was going to leave. But Peter put his hand on the prince's shoulder and said, "We still have 2 months together. Let us make them count." And so they did. The day of the Celestial Games had arrived. The massive arena of Dracon Prime was filled with thousands of beings from across the galaxy. There were tall aliens and short aliens, beings made of fire and beings made of ice. There were leaders and warriors and scientists. All of them had come to watch the young Prince Carthax prove himself worthy of the Dragon Throne. The Emperor sat in the highest section of the arena, surrounded by guards. The Empress sat beside him, her scales shining under the bright lights. They were nervous. Their son had changed so much in the past weeks. He was calmer and kinder, but would he still be strong enough? Would he still have the power that dragons needed to have? In the preparation area beneath the arena, Carthax was getting ready. His scales had been polished until they shone like mirrors. His claws had been sharpened. His wings had been carefully groomed. He looked perfect. He looked like a true dragon prince. But inside he was terrified. A handler approached him with last-minute instructions. "Remember, young prince, you must show your power. You must show strength. The entire galaxy is watching. You must make them fear you. You must make them respect you." Carthax nodded, but his heart was pounding. He had been taught his whole life that this was what mattered. That respect came from fear. That strength came from power. But in the past weeks, Peter had taught him something different. Peter had shown him that true respect came from being kind and thoughtful. That real strength came from self-control. So which was right? The old way or the new way? Peter appeared in the doorway of the preparation area. He was not supposed to be there. The royal guards tried to stop him, but Peter simply said, "I am his friend. Let me say goodbye." The guards, remembering how much the prince had changed because of this human, stepped aside. Peter walked over to Carthax and looked at him carefully. "You are worried," he said. "Yes," Carthax admitted. "Everyone expects me to be fierce and scary. But you taught me to be kind and thoughtful. I do not know which one to be today." Peter smiled and put his hand on the prince's shoulder. "You can be both," he said. "You can be strong and kind. You can show your power and still have a good heart. You do not have to choose between being a good dragon and being a good person. You can be both." Carthax looked into Peter's eyes. "You really believe that?" "I know it," Peter said. "Now go out there and show them who you really are." The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "Ladies and gentlemen from across the galaxy, welcome Prince Carthax of Dracon Prime." The crowd roared with excitement. Carthax walked out into the arena, and the sunlight hit his scales. He looked powerful and beautiful and slightly nervous. He looked for Peter in the crowd and found him in the staff section. Peter raised his hand and gave a simple thumbs up, the earth gesture he had taught the young dragon. It meant, "You can do this. I believe in you." Carthax felt his fear fade away. He took a deep breath. The first task was to fly. He spread his massive wings and launched himself into the air. The crowd gasped as he soared higher and higher. He did loop-de-loops and dives and turns that showed off his power and control. It was beautiful to watch. Even the most experienced dragon fighters in the audience were impressed. But then Carthax did something that no dragon prince had ever done before. He started to play. He flew in patterns that made shapes. He created little games with his fire, making patterns in the sky that looked like flowers and stars. He made the crowd laugh instead of making them nervous. The announcer did not know what to say. Dragon princes were supposed to be fierce and scary, not playful and creative. But the crowd loved it. They cheered and laughed and clapped. Next came the strength test. Carthax had to lift and throw heavy stones. The other young dragons in the competition threw them far and hard, showing pure power. Carthax threw them just as far, but he also made it look graceful. He moved with control and precision instead of just wild strength. Then came the final test. Combat training. A mechanical dragon, created by ancient magic, appeared in the arena. It was huge and powerful and mean. Young dragons had to fight it to prove their battle skills. Carthax faced the mechanical dragon. It came at him with speed and power. But instead of just meeting its strength with his own strength, Carthax used what Peter had taught him. He watched and waited. He understood the pattern of the mechanical dragon's attacks. He moved with intelligence instead of just power. The fight was beautiful to watch. It was like a dance. Carthax would dodge and move and then strike at exactly the right moment. He was not just stronger than his opponent. He was smarter. He was faster. He was in complete control. When it was over, the crowd erupted. They stood up and cheered. They had never seen anything like it before. A dragon prince who was powerful but also kind. A dragon prince who could laugh and play but was still fierce in battle. A dragon prince who was strong in his mind as well as his body. The emperor and empress stood up too, clapping their hands. The emperor's face showed pride and relief. His son had done it. He had proven himself. Carthax walked to the center of the arena and looked up at the crowd. Then he looked over at Peter in the staff section. The human was standing, clapping hard, with tears of happiness in his eyes. The young prince raised his hand to his heart in the dragon salute of honor. But his eyes were looking at Peter. It was his way of saying thank you. It was his way of saying that this moment belonged to them both. That night, at the celebration feast, everyone wanted to talk to the prince. Leaders from across the galaxy congratulated him. Warriors asked him how he fought so well. Scientists asked him about his techniques. But Carthax kept looking for Peter. Finally, he found the human standing near the kitchen, watching from a distance. "You did it," Peter said. "You showed them who you really are." "We did it," Carthax corrected him. "I could not have done this without you." Peter smiled, but his smile was sad. "I am very proud of you, my friend. But my time here is ending. Tomorrow I must go back to Earth. My contract is finished." Carthax felt his heart break, but he smiled anyway. Because Peter had taught him that sometimes saying goodbye is also a way of showing love. The morning after the Celestial Games, the Emperor called Peter to the throne room. The human was nervous. He had packed his things and was ready to leave Dracon Prime. He thought perhaps the Emperor wanted to thank him. Or maybe to scold him for spending so much time with the prince. Peter entered the great hall with its high crystal ceiling and glowing walls. The Emperor sat on his throne, looking both serious and kind. The Empress stood beside him. Carthax was there too, standing in the corner with a sad expression on his face. "Peter," the Emperor began, his deep voice echoing through the hall, "you have done something remarkable. You have changed my son. You have made him better. Better than I ever thought possible." Peter bowed respectfully. "I only treated him like a person, Your Majesty. He did all the work himself." The Empress stepped forward. "We wish to offer you something. You have two choices. First, we can give you a position here at the palace. A real position of honor. You would be the prince's official tutor. You would have great pay and respect. You could stay on Dracon Prime for the rest of your life." Peter felt his heart pull in two directions. It was a wonderful offer. But he shook his head slowly. "Or," the Emperor continued, "we can give you enough money to return to Earth and care for your family for many years. You can go home. You can be with the people you love." Peter looked at Carthax. The young dragon's eyes were full of tears. He understood what Peter would choose. Peter had told him many times about his family. About his mother and father and younger sisters. About how much he missed them. "I must go home," Peter said quietly. "My family needs me. But I will never forget Carthax. I will never forget this place." The Empress nodded as if she had expected this answer. "Then we will give you the money. And we ask only one thing. That you visit us sometimes. That you do not forget us completely. I could never forget, Peter said. The Emperor stood up. You have taught my son something precious. You have taught him that strength and kindness can live together. That power without compassion is empty. That even a prince needs friends who tell him the truth. The Emperor paused. You have also taught all of us something important. You have shown us that a human janitor can teach a dragon prince more than all our royal tutors combined. Carthax could not hold back his tears anymore. He walked over to Peter and embraced him. It was not a formal dragon greeting. It was a simple human hug. Peter hugged him back. I will miss you every day, Carthax said. And I will think of you every day, Peter replied. But this is not goodbye forever. I will come back and visit. That is a promise. Before Peter left the palace, Carthax gave him something. It was a small book, worn from being held many times. It was one of the Earth books from the palace library. A children's book about friendship and adventure. So you remember our time together? The prince said. Peter held the book carefully like it was made of gold. I will treasure this forever. The next day Peter boarded a ship that would take him back to Earth. Carthax stood at the palace window and watched the ship disappear into the stars. The young dragon felt sad but also happy. He had made a true friend. And that was something money could not buy. 5 years passed. Prince Carthax grew into a young adult. He became the leader that everyone had hoped he would be. But he was different from other dragon leaders. He was kind. He listened to his people. He cared about their happiness, not just their obedience. Most importantly, he changed the way dragons thought about other species. He began cultural exchanges with humans and other peaceful beings. He invited scientists and artists and teachers from across the galaxy to share their knowledge with dragons. Other dragon leaders thought he was strange. They said he was too soft, too kind, not fierce enough. But the people loved him. The humans loved him. All the peaceful species in the galaxy respected him. And it all started because a human janitor had shown a young dragon that there was more to life than power and anger. One day, a message arrived at the palace. It was from Peter. He was coming to visit for the first time in 5 years. Carthax could hardly sleep the night before Peter arrived. He was nervous and excited. What if Peter had changed? What if they had nothing to talk about anymore? But when Peter stepped off the ship, Carthax knew immediately that everything would be okay. The human looked older, with more gray in his hair. But he was smiling the same smile. Hello, my friend, Peter said. Welcome home, Carthax replied, and he meant it. Peter had become like a second home to him. A reminder that kindness matters. That friendship matters. That connection between different beings is possible. They spent the weeks together just like old times. They walked through the palace. They told each other stories about the past 5 years. They laughed and remembered and shared. One afternoon, sitting in the garden where Carthax had talked to his mother so long ago, the prince asked Peter a question. Why did you stay in my life? You could have come home and forgotten about a young dragon prince. Why did you come back? Peter thought for a moment. Because you made me laugh too, Carthax. You taught me that friendship is not about power or status. It is about caring about someone. About believing in them. About wanting to help them become their best self. That is real friendship. And that is worth traveling across the galaxy for. Carthax smiled. Then I am very glad you came back. So am I, Peter said. Over the years, Peter visited every year. Sometimes he came for a few weeks. Sometimes for a few months. And every time, Carthax welcomed him like he was family. Because he was family. In every way that mattered. The story of the Dragon Prince and the human janitor became famous across the galaxy. It was told at celebrations and taught to young dragons and humans alike. It became a symbol of what was possible when different beings chose to understand each other. When they chose kindness. When they chose friendship. And it all started in the broken throne room of a palace, where a young dragon threw tantrums and a humble human simply asked to do his job. Sometimes the smallest moments change the world.